All right, welcome back. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch. And for the folks that are watching, my apologies for not coming back on and announcing that we had broken for lunch. I came back a little after people had already dispersed, so I know I've seen some chatter about that. Just want to make sure that that's absolutely clear. All right. We left off with Senator Jackson's amendment. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Jackson, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would like to withdraw my amendment.
All right.
Second. I'd like to object and ask for a roll call.
So Senator, can you grab Senator Huff?
Yeah, I object to the withdrawal of that and ask for a roll call.
Ask for a roll call with the withdrawal of the amendment. And then it has been seconded, so you could do that. Members ask for a roll call. Be to go with Senator Jackson's motion to withdraw. Senator West.
Do we have any discussion on this? Is discussion permitted on this?
We're going to roll this, and then we'll discuss right after it, because Senator Carter's got amendments right after this that she, I think, addresses a number of the amendments that are already proffered, and then I know that Senator Jackson has another amendment. So,
all right.
Vice Chair Waldstreicher.
Yes.
Senator Lee.
Yes.
Senator Castley.
No.
Senator Heddleman.
Yes.
Senator West.
Yes.
Senator Sidnor.
Yes.
Senator Jackson.
Yes.
Senator Bailey.
No.
Senator Carter.
Yes.
Senator Huff.
No.
Chairman Smith.
yes. All right, Senator Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I took some time over the break to thoroughly go through the packet of amendments, and so I'd like to offer that we would, on the prior package, accept amendments 1 and 2 because they're technical. Amendment number 3, at least a part of it, the parts on pages 3 and 4 that reinstate or clarify the rights to secondary employment, political activity, and other protections. That's amendment number 3. And I said 3 and 4, and I would add pages 7 and 9. That's all under amendment number 3. What they do, so 9 is where it really just solidifies what we're accepting in another part of the bill that says that the civilians would be subject to training, as well as that unsustained complaints would still retain the right after 3 years to be expungible.
Raise a objection to the proceedings. We had already agreed that motions would all, or amendments would all be submitted. There's no written amendment before us. The only amendment that was on the table was Senator Jackson's. That's been withdrawn and no longer exists. So it's a dead amendment by vote of this committee. So now what are we considering? Because there is no amendment.
So we're considering the exact same language that's in Senator Jackson's amendment, verbatim, zero change from what's in front of you. And so,
But in fact, she is changing it. She's saying, I'm going to pick and choose pieces of this dead amendment, and I'm going to put those back on the floor. That's not an amendment. That's. I mean, are we going to?
I'm going to.
What is the amendment number in front of us?
I understand. So she's taking the amendment, the number of amendments from Senator Jackson's amendment.
Which amendment is that?
428.
Honestly, I have like 6 Senator Jackson
Understood.
amendments.
428078/1. So that's the
Mr.
document.
Chair, I would challenge that ruling because that amendment was just withdrawn, And the senators were all notified that amendments had to be submitted in writing. We were emailed. Amendments had to be submitted 24 hours ahead of time. This amendment that is being brought up back in front of us was just withdrawn. So there's not another new amendment in front of us.
Understood. The underlying premise for that is just ensure that senators were informed and had read the amendments thoroughly and were well versed. And as we've done such this morning, going line by line, every senator on the committee understands what the amendment does. So I'm going to move forward, and we'll allow Senator Carter to move forward.
All right, just so our objection is noted that this violates the rules, that we're considering an amendment that no longer exists. It's not even before us in writing. Thank you.
Understood.
Could I
Senator West.
renew my concern, question? Okay, I got amendments 1 and 2 are being suggested in their entirety, and in amendment 3, apparently there are portions that are going to be included and portions excluded. So you're going to need to go through it slowly enough that I can follow what you're saying.
Number 3 is a long amendment. So pages 3 and 4, which address the protections that Senator Jackson and others felt were important to state out, that I initially said were not necessary, but I can see. Hold up. Yeah.
So Senator Bailey, to your question, we're not actually in the reprint, we're in the amendment text that should be at the front of the packet, and that is page 3 of 15.
So just to clarify, if we're going to do that, rather than just read some words on a page, right, I think that we should make it whole and transparent in the whole bill, just like we've done every other time. So we should be talking about where we are on the rewrite and how is that affecting the bill.
Just ask via the process, if this is being considered a new amendment, then the council should have to go through these amendment changes one by one, as was done in the previous amendment.
So it's pretty clear that, because we were all here through the last explanation, but with respect to the technical amendments that I said were 1 and 2, they basically clarify the purpose language.
She's explaining right now.
But we had council painstakingly explain every other amendment. And if we're taking up a new amendment, why is council not explaining this amendment?
No, I understand. It's not a new amendment that we haven't seen. We're familiar with it, but I'll let the senator explain, and if you want to do a brief overview, but let the senator explain.
So amendment number 1 and 2, which I said were technical amendments, you should have them in front of you from the prior package that we received. And as I said, they're technical amendments that clarify what the bill does in the purpose paragraph of the bill. I think they're pretty innocuous. Amendment number 3, shall I continue? Amendment number 3, pages 3 and 4, what they do is reinstate some of the rights that were discussed before, that we discussed at length, some of which I initially said I don't really feel that they need to be in the bill because they're already rights that people have, that officers would retain. But I was conceding that, to give Senator Jackson and others comfort, I don't see any harm with them being in the bill. And that's the rights to retain the secondary employment, and the rights to among them, the rights to retain the secondary employment and the rights to participate in political activity.
All right, Senator Carter, which amendments are you? You've explained 1 through 3?
I'm still on 3.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt what was and is amendment number 3, but not in whole. I was,
Woody, I'm sorry. All right.
There's one amendment. There's one fake amendment
So-
in front of us. There's no amendment 3. What are we talking about?
See,
okay, I was trying to skip through it.
let's take your accepted amendments one by one and adopt them or not, so we understand what's happening. So the first two amendments were technical.
I was still in the course of explaining the parts
Okay.
of amendment number 3.
All right.
I got into the protected rights and activities, and then I was going to move to page 7, which I wasn't recommending that we accept that part of the amendment. So that's why I said 3 and 4, pages 3 and 4 of amendment number 3.
I don't know. Can you see that my light is on? Could we please figure out amendment number 3, page 3? There is no amendment number 3, page 3. Amendment number 3, page 4. Is that page 3 of 15, page 4 of 15?
3 of 15. It's, if you read on that page, that's where some of the things you talked about, the political activity, secondary employment, reasonable regulations for secondary employment, law enforcement officer. I was conceding the disclosure that we discussed earlier, that we debated, that I didn't agree with. That's all on page 3 of 15, amendment number 3. And I was recommending that we adopt or accept that amendment, as well as everything on page 4. Okay? Do you understand? Can I move on?
You stop in the middle of a sentence.
It's 3 and 4 of 15. Pages, I mean.
We've taken an amendment on pages 3 and 4, and I'm wondering about this little dangling lines hanging at the top of page 5.
I think you're, okay.
Is that in or out? I don't know.
So here's what we're going to do.
That's the
Yeah,
challenge.
look, I think you're right. You're absolutely right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to table the discussion on this. We're almost there. This is the last bit of stuff that I think we have to discuss. I know that there are some forthcoming amendments from Castley and Senator Sidnor and Senator West. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, Senator Carter, we're going to get those amendments prepared tight, clean, so this is easy to explain and easy to follow. New amendments, they're already before you. We're going to table this. We'll move on to another bill. All right? So let's do the MPIA.
So this is Senate Bill 178. The bill establishes that a record relating to an administrative or criminal investigation of misconduct by a law enforcement officer is not a personnel record for the purpose of certain provisions of the Public Information Act, which otherwise prohibit the disclosure of personnel records. Instead, the bill takes these records from being a required denial and provides that a custodian of records may deny inspection of these records. There is, your offices should have received 2 different amendments And actually, I don't see the paper copy of the one that I wanted to introduce right now. If could you 170.
So the folks watching at home, council's going to grab the amendments for Senate Bill 178.
Okay, is that the only thing?
There's So there is an amendment. I think it'll be getting circulated shortly. But what the amendment would do is, this is from Chairman Smith. It would provide a definition of technical infractions, which mean minor rule violations by an individual solely related to the enforcement of administrative rules that do not involve an infraction between a member of the public and the individual, do not relate to the individual's investigative, enforcement, training, supervision, or reporting responsibilities, and is not otherwise a matter of public concern. So what this would do is it would alter the bill's provisions. I'm sorry, Senator? Well, I thought that you all might have gotten it earlier. It was 838672. I think Sandy's making copies right now just in case. It would have been distributed a couple of days ago. It says chair.
You also have them in your laptops, if you look for them. They're sent to your email. But Sandy is going to print off copies for him.
So, are we all good to go? Cool. So, paper copies will be distributed shortly, but essentially what it does is it provides that a record of a technical infraction, as defined in the bill, is a personnel record for the purpose of this section. So, those would still be non-disclosable under MPIA. They would constitute personnel records and would not be subject to the new provisions of the bill that authorize a custodian of records to deny inspection, they would still be a must deny.
Give everyone a second to read it, then I'll open up for discussion, if any. Here, I was going to, has everyone had an opportunity to read the amendment?
Jamie, do you need copies? Do you have copies? Are you good? Okay. Yep.
Is everyone good? Understand? Discussion? I make a motion to adopt the amendment.
Second.
Is everyone okay with that? Okay, great. All right.
You going to roll call this amendment or what? I don't want this amendment.
Oh, you don't want the amendment?
No.
Okay, we can roll call it. Yeah, absolutely. I asked.
This is 838672. Just still trying to figure out what the impact of it, because it says that, I mean, it's a substantial change in what we've been looking at before and what we'd analyzed, and it kind of does a switcheroo here on the way things are laid out. So it says all the personnel record is not let me see, the entire disciplinary matter is not a personnel record except for a record of a technical infraction, and then subject to subject B of the section, they may deny the records we just said. I'm trying to follow, we're going back and forth with this. So the records that we just said, except as provided in paragraph 2 of the section, a record relating to criminal, et cetera.
It's just clawing it back.
So it's not a personnel record. And
No,
then,
for this provision, it would be a personnel record and therefore clawed back and shielded, not disclosable under this bill.
well, we just said it's not a personnel record, right?
I'm saying that it is. It would be.
It says it's not, I'm sorry, this is on page 3, line 3 says is not a personnel record.
No, page 3 is a personnel record.
What, am I looking at something different? It says is not. Do I look at a different edition of this?
Yep.
Does yours say is or is not?
It is a personnel record.
Well, that's a technical violation, is a
So-
personnel record.
Correct.
Senator, I
But
think
other
I can
here is not.
explain it.
You're saying is not.
So,
I mean,
In
we're
general-
we're not really fighting about the technical violations. Nobody really cares much about them. Everybody agrees we're not letting those out. So the real ones are the ones relating to records relating to administrative, criminal investigation of misconduct, administrative or criminal misconduct by a law enforcement office of a law agency, including term investigators, a hearing record, and records relating to disciplinary decision. Those are not personnel records. And then, so they're not personnel records. And then you can deny inspection of those records subject to the exceptions in C. So then in C, then we say, we go through the 7 factors, right?
So that's, I'm just trying to adopt the amendment, which is clawing back the technical infractions from this bill, which would otherwise remove them from personnel records. I'm just trying to
Okay, so
claw
your
them back.
intent is to claw the technical stuff back into the personnel records?
Correct. That's what
Okay.
this amendment does. We're not
All right,
voting on the
just
bill.
claws
just
that back.
And that's all this does.
Okay. So then we go through, all right, so that's the only change it makes at this point, is clawing
Correct.
those
And
back.
then Senator Jackson has an amendment that
Okay.
you can look at that'll address some other things.
Okay, okay, then that's fine. I don't have any problem clawing.
Okay,
those
that's what I was
back.
saying.
All right.
Do you still want a roll call, or?
I mean, that's fine.
I didn't realize that we were altering the name of the bill, and just in the spirit of the fact that I sponsored a version of this bill for the last 2 sessions, and during that time, I've had multiple conversations with Anton Black's family, and they've been down here to testify many times, and as we were merging the bills,
yeah, they can send
are we removing?
That's fine. We can put that back in.
Thank you.
Yep.
So just to clarify, the change then would be to still keep Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021 personnel records, investigations of law enforcement officers, and then in parentheticals, Anton's Law under that. Is that? Okay.
So is everyone okay with the amendment then? Sure, yeah, absolutely. Senator Kessler.
Number K2 does not relate to the individual's investigative enforcement training. I'm not sure why we put training in there, because this would say, you were supposed to go to the range last week, you didn't go, or you were supposed to attend these training classes, you didn't go. I mean, I understand supervision, reporting responsibilities, enforcement. I'm just wondering why you put training in there. It says did not relate to, I got it, your investigative, your enforcement responsibilities. Why? You're saying, did you attend the mandatory drunk drivers training? Did you attend, we're gonna, that's not gonna be, I think that is technical. This is, it does not relate to, I'm just wondering why we included training in there. I got enforcement, supervision, reporting.
I guess if that runs the gamut, because if you fail to attend or take certain training, can't you be decertified if you don't? I'll ask our resident experts. Is that technical if you don't attend a training? Some of the
Actually, Mr. Chair, what I'm thinking, the MPIA bill was searching for if something happens with Corporal Jackson that, folks would like to see the trainings that I've been associated with, and if I haven't been making my trainings, you know what I mean? So if there's something that occurred during an incident that I should have been trained on, they need to make sure that I've been trained on it. So is that what this is doing here? I'm thinking that's what it's saying. Right? I think that's what it's saying.
So with the amendment language, so what's being excluded from the personnel records, or I'm sorry, included in the personnel records, are these things that are technical infractions. So as long as it didn't relate to training, then it would go back into the personnel record and wouldn't be disclosable. But I think in the circumstance that you just described, where it very clearly was training related, it wouldn't be a technical violation or a technical infraction. So that would be something that would be affected by the bill.
Fine.
So motions for favorable and seconded. Do you want to do roll call, or is everyone okay adopting the amendment? Okay.
This is what, the Carter amendment?
No, this is my amendment, the chair amendment, just the technical.
We already did that one.
No, we're still discussing it. Hasn't been adopted yet. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, got it. All right. That has been adopted. So now, any other amendments? Senator Jackson.
Amendment 308174-1.
So this actually is modeled on, or it's substantially similar to language that passed out of the House Judiciary Committee last year on the prior introduction. What it would do is it provides, this is Amendment 308174/1. It provides that the records that are not considered personnel records for the purpose of the bill would be a record relating to a formal complaint of job-related misconduct made against a law enforcement officer, including an investigation record, hearing record, or disciplinary decision, if, and I'm looking at bill page 3 of 4 in the reprint. The number 1 is the alleged misconduct involves the discharge of a firearm at a person by the officer. 2, the alleged misconduct involves the use of force by a law enforcement officer resulting in death or serious bodily injury. 3, a sustained investigatory finding was made by a law enforcement agency that the law enforcement officer committed, so this is a sustained finding, either 1, sexual assault involving a member of the public, or 2, any of the following acts if the act directly related to the reporting, investigating, or prosecuting of a crime, engaging in dishonesty, committing perjury, making false statements, filing false reports, destroying or falsifying concealing evidence, engaging in prohibited discrimination, and then where it tracks with the amendments to the House bill last year, it adds improperly using force against a member of the public. There are additional changes. So the way that the bill is currently drafted takes the job-related records or the misconduct records, and it makes them may deny inspection. So it takes them from a must deny to a may deny. What this does is it actually says that I just want to give you the exact wording. A custodian shall grant inspection of a record described in subsection A4, which is the list that I just read to you, if, so it makes it a must allow, 2 or more previous sustained, unsustained, unfounded, or exonerated complaints involving conduct described in 4311C, which is actually the list that I read to you, were made against the same law enforcement officer during the 12 months preceding the incident that is the basis for the complaint. The previous complaints arose out of different dates, where at least one of the dates was on or after July 1st, 2021, and the previous complaints were each made by different complainants. Now, otherwise, those records would be may deny inspection. So you have really two categories happening. There's still the may deny, but then there's the shall disclose in those circumstances that I just described.
All right, discussion. Senator Sidnor.
Thank you. And this would be, I guess, to Senator Jackson. My question, in looking at the report that had just come out yesterday about, I guess it was Tracy Wilkins, there was a incident described as, I think called a Banana Gate. So, Banana Gate, where there was a fellow officer who put a banana on the car hood of a black officer, which I think was reported ultimately to some sort of the fair practices or whatever. The question I had, as I'm looking at page 3, section C3, Roman numeral 2:5, it mentions engaged in prohibited discrimination. So my question is, if that type of incident were to occur, if there, let's say you, and I like to use the name Bull Connor, whose department that this occurred in, I'm assuming that if Bull Connor did not find Banana Gate to have been discriminatory, would it fall under this particular language, engaged in prohibited discrimination, or would there have to be a finding that there was discrimination? How would that work? What was your intent?
The intent is yes, it would.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The intent, you're asking if that is applicable to 3C25, where it says engaged in prohibited discrimination, right? So it says any of the following acts if the act is directly related to the reporting, investigating, or prosecuting of a crime.
So that would be disclosable under this.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question. I just would urge the committee to reject this amendment in total. Even though Jamie mentioned that this passed out of the House, last year, it was really a bill that was specifically written by the chiefs and sheriffs, to my understanding. And it really doesn't go far enough to get to the level of disclosure and transparency that we need. The number one complaint, the most common complaint, is harassment. Further complaints that are often made are false arrest, false imprisonment, abusive language, discourtesy. With respect to Baltimore City, the Department of Justice found that routinely investigations or IADs, internal affairs divisions within agencies, routinely and commonly downgraded complaints of excessive force to such things as discourtesy or abusive language. And so if we limit what is potentially even possible to be disclosed, we never get to the core of what we're trying to find, which is the large category of all other complaints that are made. So I would just urge that we would stick to the language of the bill. The bill provides protections already. The bill provides a custodian of records who can make a decision. There are limitations and restrictions in the bill as to what can be disclosed, and I would trust that and trust the process. I do not think that we need to further restrict this bill to these very limited categories. So I'd urge us to reject this amendment, and so I make a motion to reject this amendment.
All right, so Senator Carter has made a motion, and Senator Sidnor, you did second?
Was the motion already seconded?
So, hold on. Was the initial, you're saying his initial,
I'm sorry?
he entered it, there was no motion on his initial entry. This is the first motion I've heard on the bill, unless I'm mistaken.
But I thought the amendment was offered and seconded.
I didn't hear that. Did I miss that? Did I miss that?
So actually what happened is, once the bill was finished being read, you, Mr. Chairman, asked if there were any questions. So the bill was not offered. But what I would proffer to Senator Carter's statement is, you're asking for, you believe that any and every complaint that is cast on an officer should be discoverable?
Well, allegations. Complaints that are made that are not the very minor ones that Senator, the chairman's amendment took care of, they should be disclosable, but it should be a matter of discretion. There should not be a blanket prohibition against them. It's a matter of discretion for the custodian of records, and so that is true. And I want to also say that, well, actually, we didn't pass the other bill, but there's a time limit under current law as to the length of time that any allegation that's not sustained could even exist. So I'm not concerned about, this huge, epidemic of all of these unfounded allegations coming out against someone. I also believe that the mere disclosure itself is not that damning, because it also shows that there was an allegation, but the allegation was not sustained. So I don't think that it's, this horror, this parade of horribles that some people have contended. So anyway, I'm going to renew my, I don't think I need to. I'm going to ask that we vote this amendment down. Keep the bill as it is.
And thank you. The mere fact that, you do realize that the custodian of records works for the chief or the sheriff, right?
Usually.
Oh, yeah, always. Always. So the concern about what is discoverable, if you're given the option. But,
I mean, the truth is, we could speculate all day long about how, corruption and bias is going to exist in the world and in police agencies. But we have to deal with the situation that we have. Now, we don't have a situation where we're going to say, okay, the chiefs have to go out and hire an independent custodian of records. I mean, that's not something that's on the table. We have to accept the agencies as they exist, and we have to figure out how we can improve the processes. And so that's true, but, custodians of records for every agency work for the agencies. Most likely, if we talked about these, anything that's a significant request is going to be vetted through legal counsel for the agency.
Roll call was called, so we'll roll it.
Vice Chair Wildstreicher.
No on the unfavorable.
Senator Lee.
Wait, what are we voting on now? To reject this amendment? To reject this. So if I say yes, it's rejecting the amendment?
If you say yes, you're voting to kill the amendment. No
Yes.
is voting to keep it in front of us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Senator Carter's motion was to defeat the amendment. It's been rolled, so a yes on that motion will be to defeat the amendment.
Can I get on mic for 1 second?
Sure, yes.
I apologize. I misunderstood the motion. Can we restart the roll call?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wildstreicher.
Yes.
Senator Lee.
Yes.
Senator Casserly.
No.
Senator Huddleman.
Yes.
Senator West.
No.
Senator Sidnor.
Yes.
Senator Jackson.
no.
Senator Bailey.
No.
Senator Carter.
Yes.
Senator Huff.
No.
Chairman Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer my motion, my amendment, which is 55886.
Sure, yes. is carries. The amendment is defeated. So now we'll move on to Senator Castley.
76/1.
This is number 558.
8876/1.
Correct.
This is, I think it was seconded. I'll speak on the motion. So this was very similar to the last motion. It was prepared from the Chiefs and Sheriff's amendment. And the reason for the amendment is to, I think it's very important that as we look at trying to achieve greater transparency in the as the public tries to achieve greater transparency regarding allegations of police misconduct, which I'll just note is not a bad thing to achieve greater transparency, but we must also balance that interest against the interest that we ought to have as a statewide body in encouraging folks to sign up for, aspire to sign up for a career in law enforcement, and the risk of excessive disclosure, which undoubtedly would end up in this day and age as fodder for immortality on the internet, would only discourage law enforcement, those looking at a career in law enforcement and those currently in law enforcement from pursuing such a career or extending such a career. We've just seen, and this committee has sat through endless testimony about how the internet has destroyed people's lives, driven them to depression and suicide. And I think that because of that, and we've seen how we sit here day after day and address expungement bills, where we talk about how the harm that's caused when to someone for job prospects, apartment prospects, the harm that's caused by the presence on the internet of allegations which actually were proven to be true. Not even just unfounded allegations, but allegations that were subject to trial in a court, and how that's damaging to people's every aspect of their lives, not just simply their jobs, but their ability to get an apartment, their social life. And because of that, it's really incumbent upon us in a day and age where we see how the presence of excessive amounts of information on the internet can be so damaging. It's just imperative that we make some reasonable efforts to balance the interest of the public in transparency versus the interest of the police officers and potential police officers in maintaining some degree of privacy and civility in their lives. And I don't believe that the current bill achieves that balance. I think that these amendments that were proposed by the chiefs and sheriffs go a very long way towards achieving that balance. And certainly they achieve it to a much greater degree than the bill does. And I'll just note that this bill does allow disclosure of information regarding sexual assaults, dishonesty, perjury, false statements, destroying evidence, hiding evidence, discrimination, and these are fairly broad categories because these are not narrowly tailored. So I think this amendment is a very reasonable amendment, and I think it achieves the kind of balance that we ought to be seeking in this matter. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Castley. Senator Bailey.
I'd move a motion to accept Senator Castley's amendment. Oh, was it second? Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Move this amendment, and it was second.
Yep, that's right. So, say what? Yeah, yeah.
So, but you're free to speak on it.
Yeah, do you want to speak more on it?
That it has any relevance in this context, but it makes common sense. And that is one thing that we have forgotten in some of this process, that is what we are doing.
We're missing, someone's taking a bathroom break here, so I just want to make sure we get at least one person back before we vote. Further discussion.
So I just move on favorable.
So Senator Carter, go ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything, but it looks like we have a little bit of a lull. I just wanted to address part of Senator Cassidy's preamble, which is that this concept that if we allow for the potential disclosure of disciplinary records, that somehow that's going to have this chilling effect on people that want to be law enforcement officers. As fate would have it, I'm petrified to drive in the snow or bad weather. So I got a ride over here this morning, and the person that was driving me was a person that said that he had a desire to be a law enforcement officer. I told him about the legislation that is before us today regarding potentially Leobor repeal, as well as this personnel records issue. And I asked him how he felt about it. Like, how do you feel? Like, if you were a law enforcement officer and these kinds of allegations, even if they weren't founded to be accurate or true, if they were, disclosable. And he did say that that would have nothing to do with his desire to be a law enforcement officer, and we ultimately agreed. And I want you to know I wasn't attempting to persuade this person, but he agreed with me that in going into that profession, just as I've talked about the professions that we're in, that disclosure doesn't hurt that. No one is saying that they don't want to be in a profession because what they do while in the profession as a public person is potentially disclosable to the public. So I believe strongly that those people of great character and integrity, this is not going to have any negative impact. In fact, it'll make them feel more strongly about being in law enforcement, because they will know that the bad apples that they want no affiliation with are going to be potentially exposed. And so I just completely disagree that the idea that the potential disclosure of these records would have a chilling effect on people that want to be in the profession. We want people in the profession that want to be transparent, that have good character, that have integrity. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I really believe, I want you to know, on this point, I truly believe that I am correct.
So Senator Cassidy, you said a motion for the favorable, right? Okay, and it's been seconded. So this is a motion for the favorable. We're going to roll call it.
Can I speak on this amendment?
Absolutely. Senator Huff.
I mean, with all due respect to Uber drivers in the state and what their opinion is on the bill, I mean, I think it's pretty poignant what police officers actually say. This bill has one purpose in mind: to discredit, embarrass, and abuse law enforcement officers of their reputation and livelihood. If such a need is warranted for the law enforcement community, then why not our legislators? Why not our government employees? Why should these classes not be subjected to these partial rules? There exists in Maryland a due process for law enforcement officers, the Leobor, which of course we're about to eviscerate that. Just as there exists a due process for all government employees. This is a process that existed for 45 years and continues to be a proven process of discipline and removing officers from the profession.
Senator Jackson has stepped up to provide testimony on a bill. He'll be back in just a minute, so we can just hold the vote open for a second until he comes back, out of respect.
You want to vote it and then just let them vote?
I mean, if it could change the outcome, I don't know. Right?
The rule is if it changes the outcome, you can't.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why we're going to wait. That's it. It's over. Just for the folks viewing at home, we're waiting for Senator Jackson to finish up testifying in another committee, and then we're going to take this vote. Just again, checking in for the folks streaming online. We're still waiting for Senator Jackson. Just want to make sure that everyone's fully aware of that. Okay, so the Senator Cassidy's offered an amendment. It's been seconded. We're going to do a roll call. There you go. All right. Sorry. Field support, so the motion was for a favorable, and that was seconded, so.
Vice Chair Waldstraker,
No.
Senator Lee,
No.
Senator Casserly,
Yes.
Senator Heddleman,
No.
Senator West,
Yes.
Senator Sidnor,
No.
Senator Jackson,
Yes.
Senator Bailey,
Yes.
Senator Carter,
Yes. No, I mean, no.
Senator Huff,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I move my amendment number 103521.
All right, excellent. Senator Castley has another amendment.
103521.
Mr. Chair, I got that.
This is the amendment that strikes law enforcement officers and substitutes the word public employees. It's 103521.
The purpose of the amendment, it would treat all public state employees exactly the same if we pass the amendment.
That's right. We've heard so much testimony about how wonderful sunshine is that there's no reason to assume it would be any less wonderful for the rest of the the state employees.
Well, I would second the senator's amendment, given that we've heard so much talk about how police need to be treated like other employees. It seems fair to me, so.
All right, motion's been made, it's been seconded. We're going to hold it open for 1 second just because I want to make sure folks have it before them.
So you should have Senator Cassidy's amendment in front of you. It's 103-521. And as Senator Cassidy indicated, it expands the application from law enforcement officers to public employees. So these records of relating to administrative or criminal investigations of misconduct by a public employee, including internal affairs investigatory records, hearing records, and records relating to disciplinary decisions would not be considered personnel records for the purposes of this section of MPIA, the section relating to personnel records. Instead, they would fall under a may deny inspection provision of MPIA.
All right, motion's been made, it's been seconded, motion for favorable. We are waiting, just, I know Senator Jackson's back testifying in his bill, so let me go try to grab him from the back here. Let's see. Okay, so Senator Jackson caught up. Senator, we're voting on Senator Cassidy's amendment, which would expand the disclosure to all public employees. It has been, there's a motion for a favorable and it's been seconded. So we'll roll it.
Vice Chair Waldstreicher.
No.
Senator Lee.
No.
Yes, and just briefly explaining my vote. This will obviously apply to fewer incidents for most public employees because they don't usually have the opportunities. They don't work long shifts and out with the public, and they have. But certainly, where the shoe does fit, it's appropriately that they wear it. I think that since we've heard so much praise for the beauty and of absolute disclosure, I think it's only appropriate that we apply it across the board to all public employees, and especially where the testimony has been throughout these police hearings, police-related hearings, that we want to treat police officers not worse than and not better than other employees. So that's the justification for the motion. Thank you for the amendment.
Senator Heddleman.
No.
Senator West.
Yes.
Senator Sidnor.
No.
Senator Jackson.
No.
Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Senator Carter.
No.
Senator Huff.
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Nope. Sure, Senator West.
3321/1. I don't know if everybody has a copy of that or not. Well, I'll move the amendment to get it.
So let's, all right, the amendment's so hot that it's been moved and seconded already without explanation. So let's hear the explanation and then we'll move forward.
a long time in the last week to Senator Carter and her explanations of her various bills. In connection with this bill, I jotted down notes on 3 occasions where she explained why this bill was so good. She said there's a mythological concern about harm to a law enforcement officer who's subject to this bill. Then she said separately, those law enforcement officers who have integrity will be more comfortable in their work if this bill is passed. And then finally, she said, it can be a benefit to a law enforcement officer to be the subject of a complaint that's not sustained. So I'm thinking to myself, who else should be subject to the sort of disclosures that this bill will require, that will subject every single uniformed law enforcement officer in the state? And I thought, above all, members of the General Assembly. It's not as if our house is clean like the Augean stables after Hercules was finished with them. We have had a number of people in both the House of Delegates and in the State Senate in my short career here who have gone to jail. And, you know, as Senator Carter also said, where there's smoke, there may be fire. So if we are truly going to require the men in blue and the women in blue in this state to have all the complaints against them, even though unsustained, made public, certainly we should also require any complaints against the members of the General Assembly to be subjected to the same public scrutiny. So my bill is very simple. It adds to the underlying bill, a statement that not only will officers be subject to this sort of public scrutiny, but also members of the General Assembly with respect to any ethics violation, whether claimed or sustained. So what's sauce for the goose really ought to be sauce for the gander. And if we're going to subject the policemen to this, we should subject ourselves to it as well. So I move the amendment.
So I just say that as we mature in life, sometimes it's very important that we do self-analysis, self-evaluation. And often that takes and causes us to take a minute and just look in the mirror so that we can see truly what a lot of times we blame other people. We say, well, this is the fault, this is what's happening, but really and truly, a lot of things rest on us. I'd say that I really appreciate this amendment. I walked in the shoes of the men and ladies that are first responders. And if we're going to require this of them, then we too should be that open, and we should be able to look in the mirror and live by the same standard that we're requiring them to live by. Thank you.
I would think all the arguments for this bill would apply to members of the General Assembly. First off, if we're going to put this standard on others, should we not live up to the same standard? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Strikes me as hypocritical, especially given that our house is so out of order. I would say if you're looking at organizations that have had problems with corruption and criminal activity, look no further. Almost every session, it's a rite of passage that there's a wiretap and another member of the General Assembly going to prison for taking bribes, and session after session, we have been filling our prisons up with Maryland General Assembly members. So rather than all of us be tarred, as the public sees, as being corrupt and taking money, I would prefer that people know. And we constantly read stories of ethics violations. When you read around the paper, someone has made an ethics complaint. And what do you see afterwards? Nothing. Nothing, because an internal body, General Assembly, deals with it, and there's no further story. You don't know what happened. The same argument for police. So to prove that we're not just here passing anti-police bills and an anti-police agenda, let's hold ourselves to the same standard that we hold others to, given the Maryland General Assembly's very long track record of corruption over the last couple years. I would say there's no way we can say we're above this. And it would be completely hypocritical for us not to hold ourselves to the same standards, given that when there are ethics violations against members of this body, they are routinely swept under the rug and hidden. Routinely. I've seen it time and time again. You see the violation, Somebody makes a complaint, you see that in the paper, it disappears in a black hole and never comes out. So rather than us all be tarred and feathered as corrupt and taking money, as unfortunately a number of our colleagues have who are going to prison, I say we put ourselves to the same standard that we're putting police to.
Senator Sidnor.
Thank you. No, as I'm listening to the proponents for this amendment, I just wonder if they would vote for the bill with no floor fight or anything else with this amendment in there. And I mean, if they were to do that, I might seriously consider it.
Senator Carter.
So I'm all for transparency and accountability, and I might even be amenable to supporting this concept, but this is a separate issue. This issue here is the bill before us is dealing specifically with law enforcement records. It's not dealing with other public employees. It's not dealing with elected officials. And so my suggestion is that we would reject this amendment. And if the proponents of the amendment, supporters of the amendment, want to put in a bill, we can have bill hearings on it. We can take a look at maybe how other states deal with these issues, because I am actually not aware of what is disclosable and not with ethics rules with both with Maryland and with other states. I think it's something that we could take a look at, but I think it's not it's not appropriately added to this bill. So I would reject the amendment and suggest that if Senator Castley or Senator West wants to offer a separate bill, we'd certainly be happy to take a look at it.
Okay. Senator Castley, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is it's actually a really short amendment. And the reason it's a really short amendment is because it's an amendment to the very same section of the code that the bill is addressed to. It's just, I think, Senator West, you look at the basic amendment is like 4 or 5 words. It's really all that he's changing here. So it's not like a major amendment that we see time and again in this body and a body across the street where we totally rewrite a bill. This is just a few words. And you lead by example. And to suggest that we shouldn't do this until a later date, I'm sorry, I just find that not the kind of attitude we need to have if we're going to move forward in addressing issues of corruption. To say, well, let's only do these people this year. We'll look at these other guys next year. The issue here is public corruption. And public corruption, you know, a corrupt cop kills or wounds one person. A corrupt official slowly kills and or destroys lives, one vote at a time. And that's every bit as evil, because while a corrupt member of the General Assembly typically doesn't hit anybody or shoot them, when we vote based upon corrupt motives, we do slowly degrade lives. We degrade the quality of public education, kill small businesses, undermine public health. And over time, that's a serious problem. And it doesn't hit the front page like a police brutality action would, but it's every bit as destructive to our society overall, and I would argue that it's even more destructive. So I support this amendment wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so there's been a motion for favorable. It's been seconded for. You're absolutely right. Let me go grab them. So the amendment is to expand the scope to members of the General Assembly. There's been a motion for favorable, it's been seconded, so we're going to do a roll call.
Vice Chair Waldstraker.
No.
Senator Lee.
No.
Senator Castley.
I vote in favor of public transparency, yes.
Senator Heddleman.
No.
Senator West.
Yes, of course.
Senator Sidnor.
No.
Senator Jackson.
No.
Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Senator Carter.
No.
Senator Huff.
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
No. All right, so the amendment fails. Further amendments.
I don't know if she, do you want to? So the current cross-reference, Senator, is to three. Sorry, the current cross-reference for law enforcement officer in the bill is 3101, which is that's the definition of law enforcement officer under the currently OBER. So there's a separate definition for police officer later in the public safety article that changes it to. So I don't know if that might be.
Expansive, but if it needs to be police officer to conform with what we're doing now, because I think even in Leobor, we're calling it law enforcement officer, correct? So I would say, I wouldn't offer the amendment.
Okay.
Further amendments. Further discussion. All right.
Unfavorable motion.
Okay, so Senator Huff has made a motion for the unfavorable. It has been seconded. We gotta get Senator Jackson real quick, but we'll roll it. We'll do roll call in a second.
Then you got to roll it on the favorable. Well, you got to discuss the unfavorable. So feel free to discuss at it.
No amendment's going to from my amendment earlier.
No, you can get anything on.
All right, so the motion's been made for an unfavorable. It's been seconded. We're going to do a roll call.
Senator Waldstraker,
No.
Senator Lee,
No.
Senator Casserly,
Yes.
Senator Huddleman,
No.
Senator West,
Yes.
Senator Sidnor,
No.
Senator Jackson,
No.
Senator Bailey,
Just say that we should definitely not have multiple standards. We should all live by one standard. We shouldn't think because we sit here as elected officials, we have a higher standard than the people that do the frontline work and protect our families. I will be voting yes.
Senator Carter,
No.
Senator Huff,
Yes for the unfavorable.
Chairman Smith.
So, sorry. No on the, this is the favorable, right?
This is an unfavorable.
So, yeah. Yeah. So
no on the unfavorable.
No on the unfavorable, yeah. Uh-oh. All right, it's for Senator Carter, do you have a motion?
Motion's unfavorable.
Senator Sidnor has seconded. Open for discussion, Senator Huff. Favorable with amendment. Senator Huff.
I know that some people and the sponsor feel strongly about the bill and is very sincere about it, but I just find it hard to believe that the majority of the committee believes, with no amendments, this is the best work product that JPR could put out on the floor. I think, unfortunately, if you look at a number of these police bills, I think there's been an honest attempt, at least originally, to work together on some of these. And quite frankly, that honest attempt doesn't meet the agenda of the ACLU, the Office of Public Defenders, and others. And while many people sincerely are swayed by them and believe in what they're saying, I don't know that the majority does. And I just think it's sad with Judicial Proceedings, which has had such a wonderful tradition over the years of putting out fine work products on the floor, working together. This is the first time in my time on the committee. I know most people don't care. You're reading your emails and your Facebooks and things like that. But I do want to make a point. This is the first really purely partisan voting session I've seen on that. And if that's the way it's going to be, I guess that's the way it's going to be. But it's a shame when you're dealing with public safety, with police, with crime, that a committee that has time and time again in the past come together on contentious issues, issues of race, equality, everything else that has passed in the past. People, members of this committee, have passed some of the largest reforms of criminal justice, and we've actually did a police and done all these things before you, unanimously work together. That the process is so broken down, and I think in the hearts a lot of people know what we're putting on the floor is not the best work product of this committee. And I just want to say it's very disappointing to see where this committee, that we have devolved into the sort of rancorous, bitterest politics, and we have let politics get in front of what is good policy. And, you know, when I was a member of the House, you would often more likely see that. But the Senate is an exception, and JPR had been an exception. And I know this is not moving a lot of members because they don't care. This is where they want to see things. They want to see the ACLU and Office of Public Defender drive what's here. And we don't need to read the amendments. We don't need to read the bills. We just look at who comes in and testifies. Well, when I'm here, that's sacrosanct to me, what's in those law books. It's important. I've crossed party lines many times on this committee, try to do what's right. But the problem is there's not a willingness on the other side to work on these issues anymore. So I've seen it on this. I hope we can come back together, but I think this is a foreshadowing of where we are going as a committee.
Senator Carter.
I feel regarding what the senator just said, you know, I think he's fortunate if this is the first time that he's seen an issue that he didn't feel there was bipartisanship effort on. Over many years, I've seen and felt the sting of this legislative body not honestly dealing with police reform and some justice issues as they needed to be dealt with. It's been a burden on me as a legislator, but it's been a burden on the impacted people that have come down to this body year after year after year and begged and pleaded with us to give them some modicum of understanding, sympathy, and justice under the law. Now, at this particular bill hearing, there were over 70 submitted written testimonies. Among them, Prince George's County Democrats, Law Enforcement Action Partnership, Tacoma Park Mobilization, Maryland Association for Justice, Surge, Baltimore City, Prince George's People's Coalition, Maryland State's Attorneys Association was favorable actually with amendments, the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability, Jews United for Justice, Maryland Chiefs and Sheriffs, favorable with amendments, NAACP, Maryland Legislative Coalition. In fact, ACLU of Maryland was one, showing up for racial justice. Of all of the more than 70 pieces of written testimony we received in support, we only received 2 unfavorables, one from the FOP and the other from Scott Schellenberger. And so I would disagree that this is somehow not listening to a diverse cross-section of the people. From just about every jurisdiction, individuals and organizations have testified or submitted testimony that they support this. There was also a survey that went out, and I don't remember the exact number. Someone else in here may have read it or seen it, but I think it was something like 87% of Marylanders favor the disclosure of these records. And so I actually, with 100% confidence, believe that we are doing the right thing and that we are truly representing the interest of our constituencies and the people in passing this legislation. I also do not believe it's unfair to the law enforcement community. And, you know, I am a big proponent of fairness in every arena for everyone, and I wouldn't support anything that I think is patently unfair. And so for all of those reasons, I would move favorable in this bill and hope that we would pass this legislation and do so with pride in the work that we've put in. Thank you.
Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share Senator Huff's feelings of extreme disappointment as we sit here today. Over in the House of Delegates, the big project I was involved in during my 4 years over there was the Justice Reinvestment Act, in which I worked very closely with the Democrats in the House of Delegates, in particular Kathleen DeMay. And we worked very hard on that, and I was even a part of the conference committee, which stayed very late on Saturday night in order to hammer out a consensus product that both houses could adopt overwhelmingly on the floor the following day, on Sunday, or 2 days later on Sunday day. This year, as you know, this past week, I proposed the Juvenile Restoration Act. So I think I've demonstrated through my own conduct that I'm willing to work across the aisle and to work cooperatively with people to try to achieve a consensus product that we can go to the floor with and feel proud about. And that's why I feel so disappointed in what's going on in the committee today. We had Senator Jackson's amendment, which I thought was pretty good, but because of obstructionist behavior by one of the senators, he ended up withdrawing his own amendment, which I'm sure was very embarrassing to him. Because I don't know, I wasn't in the room, but I can't believe that he did that without a lot of misgivings. Finally, I want to turn to what we haven't discussed. We have, my goodness, we've discussed these bills longer than any other bills that I can ever remember in this committee anyway. And in HCO, I was in HCO in the House, we didn't discuss any bills a fraction of this time. Not one word has been mentioned about the effect of these bills on the morale of the state's justice forces. So we know what happened in Baltimore City after the Freddie Gray riots. Today, the Baltimore City Police Department has hundreds of vacancies. They have tried everything they possibly can over the last several years to fill those vacancies, unsuccessfully. What happened? The senior professional members of the Baltimore City Police Department departed. They took early retirement. The mid-level people left the police department to go for jobs in the private sector. And they're not able to get enough young people to replace all the people who have left. We are now, instead of fixing Baltimore City's problems, in my view, what these bills collectively will be doing is exporting Baltimore City's problems to all the other police departments around the state. I expect to see lots of retirements, early retirements in Baltimore County, my home county, and other counties around the state. I expect to see mid-level career policemen trying to find jobs in the private sector, and I expect to see a really tough time in attracting the best talent of the young people to apply for the vacancies that will exist. The issue of what we're doing to the morale of the Maryland police departments has not been given one sentence of discussion during the course of these conversations. I'm very disappointed, and so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to give the opportunity to go cross. So we've got Senator Castley. Anyone else? Senator Castley, then Senator Bailey.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, we put a lot of time in on all this, and I appreciate the opportunity to engage in discussion, but I do share absolutely the concerns by my colleagues who have voiced their concerns here this afternoon. We often say that, and I've heard it said many times on the Senate floor, that it's a good thing we're not like Washington and that we're bipartisan. And I hear that, but sometimes I wonder, I wonder, isn't it a little bit like, are we truly in a bipartisan philosophy, or is Washington more contentious because they're more balanced? They're a 50-50 split, and perhaps Maryland's less contentious because, it's sometimes I think we're like I feel like we're in a situation of the serial spousal abuser who's saying, see how cooperative we are? What a good relationship we have. And it's not a healthy environment. I too asked I'm not a law enforcement officer, so on all this array of law enforcement bills, I didn't ask the Uber drivers, but I did ask a lot of law enforcement folks about their views. And it's sad to see, when you see the General Assembly, and this is not just the Senate, but the House at writ large, pursuing a dramatic anti-police agenda. It has an impact that cannot be felt at this moment and will not be felt tomorrow. But certainly, as you talk to police officers, we have police families granddad and mom and dad and sis and brother who go into policing. I can't tell you how many times I hear police officers say they're talking their kids out of the career. It's just not what it was when they signed up. That there's a lack of respect, of public respect. The risks are very high. You dedicate your life to this. You dedicate your life to a profession, and then the General Assembly proposes a bill that you're going to put a kangaroo court up to destroy somebody's entire life, take their profession and their money. Do we have things to correct? Absolutely, we have problems to correct. I wrote about it extensively over the past year. I took a lead in putting out editorials in different papers assailing the current status of the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, that it had become largely ineffective in many regards in trying to effectively police our police. But the solution is not to go from one extreme to the other extreme. The solution is for this body to very deliberatively and fairly achieve that middle ground that both protects the public safety and polices the police, and does it in a manner that's fair to all of our officers. And I don't see that's what we're doing here this afternoon. We've gone back and forth for many hours over the past 2 days, and it just really reeks of just just entrenched partisan positions. And what I hear way too often down here is, well, the advocates want. Here's what the advocates want. And I see it. I mean, I get on Twitter. I mean, they're vicious. Everything we say or do here is manipulated, and we're evil. If you weren't with them, there's two sides. There's the good and the evil. And we actually had a lawyer in here on a bill last week who literally said that the people on the other side were evil. It was a lawyer on a bill. And she was from out of this state, and she came in here, a paid hack, came in here to testify on a bill and assailed the opponents of that of her bill that she was here to pay, as a paid advocate to testify on. We've taken a rough turn in this state, and you know, you expect to see that on highway projects and trying to divvy up the money for the pork, but that's not where we are. We're talking about public safety, and if we don't get that right, you know, when we make bad decisions on education, it just doesn't show up very much because it's over time. You know, we have the fourth grade class gets a little dumber than the last fourth grade class. The teachers get a little worse, but it's so gradual that it's just not dramatic. But when you screw up policing, you can see it in the crime rates, and you can see it in the crime rates. If you really look at where the crime is expanding and where it's been, I'm still stymied as to why we are modeling legislation out of Baltimore City as the model for the rest of this state. The level of incompetence, of misdealing that's causing their problems is astounding. And for some reason, we use them as the model for the state and continue to roll out legislation to fix a problem with Baltimore City that's supposedly pushing out to the rest of the state. We've got to do better than this, folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Cassidy. Senator Sidnor, did you have something to say, or did you want to say something, or are you good? Okay. I want to go to Senator Bailey because I saw him first, and then I'll go to Senator Carter.
So there's a tremendous amount of intelligence. There's a tremendous amount of gifted people around the Washington metro area, especially here in Maryland. Bills as comprehensive as this should have gone to a think tank. They should have been referred to something, and we should have gotten credit, a lot of input from something like Johns Hopkins think tank. So we could have come out with a quality product. By putting a bill like this out, we are truly losing the respect of the Maryland citizens that we should be representing and working for. We are disrespecting the police that when we dial 911 to come to our house to help us, right, that is what we are doing. You know, we asked for input when we came down here. We asked for input on these bills. Did we take any of the amendments from the state's attorneys or the chiefs of police? And I guess the thing that I would finish with, sorry, a little discouraged about this whole process, but when we talk about stats and what people think of the police, I just wonder how many Marylanders would want legislators to be open to the same standards for public disclosure that we're now requiring our police officers. And I'd say it'd be 100%. They would all want us to be to the same standard that we're requiring our public safety officials to stand upon. But wait a minute, we're better than that, right? We do as we say, not as we do. That's an immature parent that makes a decision and a discussion like that. Thank you.
Let me go to Senator Heddleman, then I'll come over to Senator Carter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm new to this committee, as are some of my colleagues, and these are issues that have been around a long, long time. And this committee and others in the Maryland General Assembly have been grappling with them for a long, long time. And these are not unique to Maryland, and we saw this summer, and we've been seeing for years and years and years, the racism, the secrecy, the structural problems that there are in many of these systems, and transparency and shining a light and giving people who have been wronged the ability to find out what happened in their case, in my opinion, is a good thing. They should know how it was handled by the system. And I see that happening under this bill. People are entitled to know. Now, I agree, we as public officials should be held to a different standard as well. And I offered my colleague across the aisle here the opportunity to next year to come back and work on a bill together, but that's a different issue from this. We trust police officers to keep us safe, and I have a great deal of respect for the job that they do. And we want to ensure that they are doing it well and that people can rely on them. These are people, I mean, this is about our values. And I just want to kind of bring it back to that. Shining a light on what is happening. I mean, there's just too much. There's been too many officers and too many reports that have multiple unsubstantiated complaints. And when you see that there are dozens and dozens on a handful of the same people, it makes you wonder what is happening to not hold those people accountable. And so, and it's not just one jurisdiction. As we've seen across the country, I think that this has been the case and been the policy in many other jurisdictions and many other states across the country. And they have police forces and they have new people going into the occupation. And I hope and trust that that will continue here. So I hope to continue working across the aisle, but I think this is a bill that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Senator Hellman. Senator Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If any legislative body has demonstrated our love for law enforcement, it has definitely been this Maryland General Assembly. Because year after year after year after year, we have heard from hundreds of families, impacted families, families of victims of police brutality, who have begged for us to do something. And so this is absolutely not about what advocates want. I'm legislating for people like Greta Willis, Tawanda Jones, Chris Brown, LaToya Holly, Darlene McCain, the family of Anthony Anderson. Chris Brown was in Baltimore County in 2012 and was really the case that got my attention on the great need for better transparency and reform. My colleagues from Baltimore County who contended that Freddie Gray, or the aftermath of Freddie Gray, had this deterrent effect and caused officers to flee from the police force, I would just note that, first of all, some of those mid-level command staff probably should have gone because they've been part of a culture of corruption for a very long time. But aside from that, I don't think that people rising up against injustice that was confirmed by the Department of Justice report that highlighted a pattern and practice of unconstitutional practices, but people rising up after being abused, tortured, hyper-policed, mistreated for decades, people rising up certainly wasn't the impetus for massive flight from the Baltimore Police Department. I would posit that most likely the fact that it's been revealed to the world that this was a police department that had a pattern and practice of unconstitutional practices. Maybe it was the highly suspicious death of Detective Suter, or perhaps it was the gun trace task force that caused people to want not be a part of that police force. I'm not really sure, but I don't think people rising up against injustice was probably the reason. And now it is a good thing if people who don't want to be exposed for their bad deeds want to go. That actually helps us achieve a goal of getting integrity into these police forces. And so, with that said, I want to ask that we just finally move favorable on this piece of legislation. we are doing the work of the people, and this is not an unfair process. And as we've said multiple times, there are other states that disclose these records, and there's been no parade of horribles that has occurred as a result of it. In fact, I think that we'll come back in a couple of years and see that this has actually been a tool that has gotten us closer to what we want to achieve in public safety in Maryland.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Carter. We'll grab her off the screen. So thank you, Senator Carter, and thank you for everyone that took the time to speak up. And I know we've been through this process for several months now. I've been in the Assembly. I came in with a number of you, I think 2015, 16, and I've been chair of this committee for, this is my second session now. And last year we were faced with the challenge of addressing issues of crime, and a number of folks on this committee took an extremely difficult vote, crossed party lines, and took a vote that they never would have taken under normal circumstances, and showed tremendous political courage. That set the tone and tenor for that session, and I think that tradition of bipartisanship continues here today. Now, obviously, the merits of every bill are subjective, and some bills you may find extremely offensive. Others we can find common ground. I want everyone to know that we are going to continue to work in earnest in a bipartisan fashion, but there are decision points. This, in my time in the General Assembly, is the most difficult problem set I've ever faced. It's the most difficult, most complex, most emotional. It's infused with race, history, militarization, police. Now, I've always regarded our law enforcement officers and our men and women in uniform as amongst the most highly regarded and, I think, important and time-honored professions in our society. I've served in uniform, and I respect all of those who do as well. The premise of this entire discussion has never been an anti-law enforcement movement. And the pieces of legislation before us and the ones that we've passed have been, the two bills we've passed on this issue have been extremely bipartisan. This is a single touch point that's going to break down, it looks like, on party lines. We will continue to work through this problem set in a bipartisan manner, and we're going to develop the best policy possible. We're going to do our level best. That's all we can do as a committee and as senators in the state of Maryland. But again, changing the tone and the tenor of the conversation, this is not an anti-law enforcement movement. This is about addressing systems. Systems that have had, in many cases, devastating results, especially for communities of color. And so as we have been dealing with this issue for not only generations, we're now at a decision point. All right, we've from the summertime, hours and hours of committee time we've spent on this issue. And so I'm, to my colleagues on the other side of this issue, I am extremely, I respect you and I hear your opinion, and it's valued. You are all public servants that have contributed mightily to this committee and to this body, and I respect you more, I think, than any of you will ever know. So for the folks that are on the other side of this vote, I assure you we'll have many more. We're all on the same side again. And so with that, we'll continue to move forward. And I appreciate everything that was said, all the critique, all the criticism. Well taken. I understand. And it's appreciated. So with that, Senator Carter, your motion has been seconded. We'll roll the call.
Vice Chair Waldstraker.
Yes.
Senator Lee.
Yes.
Senator Castley.
No.
Senator Hedelman.
Yes.
Senator West.
No.
Senator Sidnor.
Yes.
Senator Jackson.
Yes.
Senator Bailey.
No.
Senator Carter.
Yes.
Senator Huff.
No.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. All right. We're going to break for a half an hour, and then we'll come back. The outcome, sorry, the bill passes. We're going to take a half an hour break. We'll come back. We've got the independent investigations bill on deck next. Senator West, Senator Heddleman, and a few other folks, and Senator Castley took your suggestions, and so we'll move forward with that. But I took your suggestions. Thank you for your suggestions on that bill, and that'll be next on the agenda. So let's meet back here at 4 o'clock.